My name is Jason, I'm 34, and I've always believed in giving my all in a relationship. I work in corporate finance, a career that demands long hours and relentless focus, but I've always made space for Samantha, my wife of 6 years. We married young, full of dreams, excitement, and plans to build a life together. I thought we shared a bond strong enough to withstand any challenge. But last Sunday, that illusion shattered. I had just returned home from work, exhausted after a long day of meetings and financial reviews. Samantha was sitting on the couch, her arms crossed, a distant look on her face. The air between us was colder than it had been in months. "Jason," she began, her voice calm but detached, "our marriage, it's cold. I have no desire." The words hit me like a blow. I froze, unable to respond immediately. I had suspected a distance growing between us. Subtle signs I had ignored, hoping things would improve. But hearing her say it aloud, so plainly, made it impossible to deny. I took a moment to steady myself, to let the sting of her confession sink in. "Samantha," I began, my voice quiet but firm. This is serious. Are you saying you want out?" She looked at me, her eyes hollow, and nodded slightly. I can't feel connected anymore. I don't want this marriage the way it used to be." 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. Anger, hurt, confusion. But underneath all of it was a clarity I hadn't expected. If she truly felt this way, if she no longer desired me or our life together, then pretending otherwise would be worse than the truth. I realized in that moment that love alone cannot fix a relationship when one person has already checked out. I walked slowly toward the door, my hands steady despite the turmoil inside me. "Samantha," I said, my voice calm but resolute. "If this is truly how you feel, I won't stop you. You can go." The words felt heavy, but liberating. They were both a release and a statement, a declaration that I would not beg for affection that was no longer there. She looked at me, her eyes wide, clearly surprised by my composure. For a moment, neither of us spoke, the silence heavy with unspoken emotions. Then she stood, gathering her bag and her coat, the reality of her choice sinking in. I didn't plead, I didn't argue. I simply watched, letting her take the first step out of a life that had grown cold. Samantha paused at the doorway, her hand on the handle, and looked back at me. For a brief moment, I saw a flicker of regret in her eyes, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Jason, I never meant for it to come to this," she whispered, her voice trembling. I nodded slowly. "I know," I said, keeping my tone steady. "And I've tried, Samantha. I've given us my best, my time, my effort. But if your heart isn't in this, if you can't feel what we once had, there's nothing I can do to force it." The weight of the years we had shared, our apartment vacations, late-night talks, arguments, laughter, pressed down on me. Memories flashed through my mind. Our first date at that tiny coffee shop downtown, the first time she told me she loved me, the night we moved into our first apartment together. Each memory was a reminder of what had once been real, but now, I understood, it was no longer enough to hold her here. She swallowed hard, tears forming at the corners of her eyes. I guess I just feel trapped," she admitted, her voice breaking. "I didn't want to hurt you. I can't explain why it feels this way." I took a deep breath, letting the calm I had cultivated over the years anchor me. "Samantha, feeling trapped is your choice, just as staying is mine. I can't control your emotions, and you can't control mine. We've reached a point where continuing would only breed resentment, and I won't let that happen." The room felt unbearably still, each tick of the clock a reminder of the life we had built together, and now, a life we were stepping away from. I could see the conflict in her expression, the push and pull of leaving versus staying, but my own heart had already made the decision. I would not beg. I would not plead. Respect and self-worth mattered more than clinging to what was no longer alive between us. Finally, she opened the door fully, the sound of it clicking against the frame echoing like a final punctuation mark. I didn't follow, didn't ask for explanations, didn't try to convince her. I simply nodded once, a quiet acknowledgement of the years we had shared and the choice she had made. As the door closed behind her, the apartment felt emptier than it had in years. And yet, in that emptiness, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: clarity. The truth, as harsh as it was, allowed me to breathe. Our marriage had ended, but my dignity, my boundaries, and my sense of self remained intact. The silence after the door closed was deafening. For a moment, I just stood there, letting the reality settle. 6 years of marriage, shared routines, and dreams had evaporated in a single conversation. And yet, strangely, I felt no anger, no bitterness, only a quiet resolve. I sat down on the edge of the bed, replaying Samantha's words in my mind. Our marriage is cold, I have no desire. There was pain in them, yes, but also honesty. Harsh as it was, she had been truthful with me. Something I valued far more than false affection or empty gestures. In that honesty, I found clarity about what I deserved. I began thinking about my future. I realized that I had spent years prioritizing our relationship above myself, sometimes ignoring my own needs to maintain a fragile balance. Now, with her choice clear and unchangeable, the path forward was mine to define. I could rebuild, refocus, and regain the life I wanted without compromise. Later that evening, I walked through the apartment, each room echoing with memories. The kitchen where we had shared countless late-night conversations, the living room where we laughed over movies, the bedroom where intimacy had once been a sacred bond. All now silent reminders of what had been lost. But instead of feeling defeated, I felt empowered. I had faced the truth and refused to compromise my self-respect for someone unwilling to meet me halfway. I knew there would be challenges ahead. Friends would ask questions, neighbors would notice changes, and the loneliness would sting at times. But I also knew that freedom, clarity, and self-respect carried a weight far more valuable than the comfort of pretending. I had opened the door for Samantha, both literally and figuratively, and I had also opened a door for myself, one that led to autonomy, dignity, and the chance to rebuild a life on my own terms. As I sat quietly, I made a promise to myself. Never again would I allow my worth to be defined by another person's disinterest or lack of desire. Intimacy, affection, and respect were not commodities to be earned. They were mutual, earned through love, trust, and commitment. And if someone could not honor that, I would no longer stay in a marriage that diminished me. The night ended with the city lights flickering through the window, casting soft shadows across the room. I felt a strange sense of peace, a quiet certainty that the hardest decision I had made was also the right one. Samantha had chosen her path, and I had chosen mine. And for the first time in years, I could breathe, knowing that honesty, courage, and self-respect had guided me through the storm.